welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And today, once again, we have a special guest, and that is Anthony Wall with Noesis. Anthony is a founder and president, and Noesis is a group that is a humanitarian group. Now get this, that teaches us how our evolution is affecting our modern behavior. Did I say that right, Anthony?
You most certainly did.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you, Anthony. As we started speaking before we got the recording going, I attended an event today, which was like, oh, I would love to hear what Tony has to say about it. So before we dive into that, we got to get to know Tony. So give us 3 words that tell us who Tony is. 3 words and a little bit of a backstory of who Tony is.
Three words. You'll recognize these words, Maria, because they describe you. 1, fearless.
I like that.
Okay. Passionate. You have to be passionate to do what I do, and focused. I'm a man who came out of retirement to do this, so I have no agenda, and that's you need the humility to pull this off. So I'd say there it is, right there. Fearless, and no agenda, whatever that word is. Yes. And whatever the second thing I said was, that too.
Passion.
Passion. Yeah. Passion comes out from everything. We are both the same that way.
Yeah. Well, that is why we're here. We only want people. So there we go. So let's talk about the project that we're working on. I do have to say something very unique. And I have to say something, I didn't even realize that there were projects like that out there. Fascinating work. How did you stumble upon this project? What got you going, Tony?
The simplest answer is the fact that I was always drawn towards philosophy, and that it then matured into an existentialist kind of thing. Now let's get rid of the big words. Existential philosophy really is logic, essentially just very steely logic. That's what it would do. So existential, let's not make too much hay out of that. We view the world through a starkly realistic lens, and we need to do that if we're going to survive ourselves. Human beings have arrived to a point, a reasonable point, where we need to determine whether we want to preserve ourselves or not, because we have trouble on the horizon that's visible. Notice that there's no alarmism there. Our species is in existential crisis. And when that's no longer a stretch, then what we're doing is now. So we are a fusion of philosophy, but also socio-mathematics. Only what we can show to be true. We are fact-based. And the only thing that we will risk is deductive reasoning on our worst day, because if you're going to do this, theory is an orphan. Human beings we're out of time. We need straight answers, not theories. So we're fact-based. We're human sustainability group. We deal mostly with the evolutionary influence upon our modern behaviors. We all think we were a blank slate. I wish that were true. When we arrive in our mother's arms, we have 100,000 prior generations of humans already wound around our bones, and that's going to push us around a little bit. So we need to understand it, not blame it.
And I will tell you from a personal experience, Tony, when I started my journey, I was very academically educated. I did well in school. However, I was never aware of the subconscious, of what was already there. I didn't know what I didn't know. As I started unfolding the pages of my own being, I was shocked of how is it possible that I was even not aware of that? There was so much conditioning there, and there was so much reactiveness to life based on, the way I've always done things, the way I was taught to do things. And there was never really a pause and a thought of, could things be different? And once you open, let's call that the Pandora box, and start seeing the word of, is this really true, or does this come from prior generations, from my culture and so forth? It's really mind-blowing what's out there.
Well, you are nothing if not self-aware. Okay, that's a great 2 words for you. You are highly self-aware. I am highly self-aware of of macro human behavior. I needed to place my emotions aside and become an observer. I mean, I'm not a robot in any way. Over a cocktail, I would regale you with comical stories. I'm just a regular guy. But when it comes to what I do, I divorced myself long ago from judgment and blame. We've monetized those things. We blame everybody for everything. We don't accept any blame ourselves. Right there, what could go wrong? So I became an observer, and that's when all of the blame and judgment stripped away, and I began to ask myself, why do we do what we do? We unwittingly monetize all of these awful models, blaming, judging. All of our models are wrapped around conflict. But there is one inconvenient thing that must intrude here. Conflict is not natural to humans. So humans in perpetual conflict, we can't survive the phenomenon. And we come from a very caring place. We need to stop the self-loathing that we feel about our entire race and swing over to empathy for a lost child, if you will. So there it is, a fusion of philosophy, socio-mathematics, and basically there's a reason for everything we do. Everything we do today will be driven by a long gone reality.
Yeah.
Those things are knowable now, and that's what we're here to do.
And Tony, it's so interesting because we kind of talked a little bit about this, how you work at the higher level, you work with the entire human race versus I work with individuals. And even when you talk about conflict, right? I think the conflict within ourselves, just in the past few days, I can give you so many examples of people who are successful and they got to do this and they got to do that. And they're not staying true. They're in conflict with who they truly are, in the benefit of achievements, the definitions of success and such that exist out there, at the expense of their health, their well-being, their fulfillment, their happiness, and so forth. And the word that you brought up, self-awareness, is not even there. There is not an option. It's almost like success and happiness and fulfillment are mutually exclusive. You can be happy and healthy and successful. It's like you're either successful and you're overwhelmed, stressed, and so forth. And what I deal with is that conflict with ourselves. And you're right, it's my boss's fault. It's my company's blah, blah, blah. But how much of that is a choice that we make? And I think we frequently lack that awareness of, I have choices. That's one of our most powerful traits as humans. We have choices and we can make decisions.
We're the only species on this planet out of 10 million that ponders its very existence. That's talking to us. We're the only one. And we're also the first generation that can not only, we always wanted to believe, we have a spiritual belief or a spiritual default. Now we have rich data about how we moved all over the world. We have the ability to believe and to know. For the first time, we can actually reach sustainability with the data we have. Will we drink? We're about to find out. But you said something that's interesting. Again, a parallel between what we do. You're talking about executive functions. We awaken every day and we determine what our obstacles are first, and we get busy clearing them. So I want you to conjure a gigantic snowplow. Our executive functions are snowplows. We plow the snow, and then we can walk the street. Mm-hmm. Human beings, the human race has lost its executive functions. we are swept along. It's nobody's fault. I need to stress this. If we were standing at a riverside and somebody went swept along down it, we would say, let's save him. We would not call him a joker. My God, that person swept along. Let's go save him. Our entire race is swept along by something nobody chose. What happened is this. When we're moving all over the world over the course of the last 300,000 years, Maria, we were banded together and we affiliated, we collaborated, we were in communion, or we died. So somebody moved the cheese. I hate that cliche as much as you do, but somebody actually moved the cheese. What do I mean? When we achieved full global migration 10,000 years ago, where was there to go? So we did the only logical thing. We organized ourselves into larger and larger populations. We domesticated large animals. We domesticated dogs whose pesky dispositions are perfect for that job. And then they became our best friends. But the point is that we settled down. So what once migrated and roamed was now asked to settle down. And the blueprint for stationary behavior, we don't have it. It's not in our blueprint. So we're blaming ourselves. We've arrived at self-loathing. We might as well blame our feet for walking.
Well, two analogies that come, and sorry to interrupt you, is, one, the mobility. I always tell people, I teach movement, I preach movement, and I tell people we are not designed, the human body was not designed to sit all day long. Like, even take that, right? Forget about roaming, but like even sitting at a desk hours and hours and hours a day, that's one. And then two, to the point that you brought up about conflict, you mentioned earlier about humans are designed to collaborate, right? Well, what does conflict do? It separates humans, right? It makes us feel different. And when we feel different, there is no more union. That collaboration is pulled apart, right? And then I really don't, do not like to discuss politics and topics which tear us apart, but it's a good thing to stop and pause and think the things that we are disagreeing on. We might have different opinions, but we are human. And at the end of the day, we all want to be happy, healthy, right? And to experience life the best that we can. And yet we fight and blame each other and don't have our optimal experience because of that conflict that's created out there.
I'm going to make a blanket statement and then I'm going to explain it. We can't help but fight, and we're not meant to fight. That's a fine mess, isn't it? What we did was when we made lesser and greater beings in our stationary societies, towns, into cities, into empires, we took up behaviors of acquisition. We diminished our own. We diminished our own speed, our own like and equal beings diminished others for the first time. Resentment intruded upon the human experience on us for the first time. Resentment has only one place to go, and that's vengeance. And this is a socio-mathematical breakdown as opposed to a choice. I observed long ago. I said I'm an observer. I observed this long ago, and you'll agree. All of our history books explain the situations of our failure. It occurred to me long ago that it's the same play with different actors. So this suggests a mathematical consideration. The precision of it is what jumped out at me. The precision of social breakdown. Precision equals math. What's the constant? We stopped collaborating and began self-interest. The two repel. Mm-hmm. So that's great. But now what? Well, a fine mess. We monetize everything that happened to us. All of the conflict. What do I mean that we have to be in conflict and we can't be? I mean that if we were to stop conflict today, financial markets would be zero tomorrow. So when I said a fine mess, that's a fine mess.
But you know, that in itself is a powerful thought to ponder on, right? To pause and think about, because there are plenty of people who have made a lot of money based on conflicts and based on acquisitions and so forth. And I will tell you for myself, a couple of observations based on what you said. I'm from Bulgaria, Eastern Europe. So a lot of our literature, a lot of our history has a lot of, I would say, hatred towards some other nations. And that's like the ethnical history of Bulgaria, right? Which, especially for Europe, there is a lot of that going on. And some of those conflicts and some of that hatred that is promoted, that takes a long time to clean up as new events are happening, right? So it's constantly revived. And then, what was the second point I wanted to make? I forgot my second point, but I think being aware of those things and being aware of how we react or respond, before, you mentioned in the beginning, we become so judgmental, right? So before we judge anybody, pausing and saying, okay, how is that person, where's this person coming from? And if we have a little bit of a better understanding, maybe we can have a different conclusion and we can have a productive conversation versus create conflict. And I would personally put myself out there and I used to be very judgy and confrontational because that is how I thought I could get my way. And that is not an effective way to grow as a human being. And I would say, you're talking in the context of humanity, I'm talking at the individual level. Humanity gets better when each and one of us becomes aware and grows as a person. Because until that awareness is there, you can do or be something that you're not aware of.
Yes, I want what I have to bring up is a little bit of discomfort, and that we're talking about the immensity of human concerns. There's an immensity to it that we won't look at. It's frightening. We're paralyzed. That's a fair statement. So here I formed this group to demystify all of what paralyzes us. Where do we even start? It's too big. Okay, let's hear ourselves say that first. It's too big. All right, we have two choices. We need to attack it. So that means our escapist behavior must be quantified and viewed. We're in escapist behavior. We're running for the exits. But that's not natural for humans. Humans are meant to quantify and solve. So when we see human beings running for the exits, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, that as that gap grows, it's not manageable. We won't survive it. Okay. So I've just explained something that's relatively daunting, but I have to, because it was the bad news that kept our evolving ancestors alive, Maria. We had to quantify the bad news, and then we got busy dealing with it, and that brought us to the other side of our day successfully. But so we need to quantify. We're here to quantify the immensity of human concerns and trying to find sustainability, and that's going to make people run. And I say, get back here. Come on, get back here. Clarity is our best friend.
And I will say, at the personal level, if you take what creates urgencies in people is things that don't go right. Right? Something big happens in your life that gets you to pause and say, how do I escape this one? And that's what a lot of people start questioning their life and their being and their existence of, how do I do this? Do I want to continue on the same path, or is there something different that I can do to change my life? So I do think, yes, things that we look at, I don't think they're failures, but with things that don't go our way, they're things that push us to grow. And I think growth is good for us. Is it uncomfortable? 100%. Is it necessary? Oh, yes. Is it good for us? Heck yes. That's what I think. I mean, I completely agree with you at the personal level.
Right. Here's this evolutionary science part of what we do. Remember, every single action that we take, all 8 billion of us, springs from a past reality. Mm-hmm. It stands to reason that would summon misaligned or misinterpreted threats. We view our environment and we misinterpret our environment. Why? Because we have the evolutionary baggage of 100,000 prior generations pressing down on our present moments. Who do we think we are, trying to move aside Mount Everest as just flesh and blood beings? I mean, we're corporeal, flesh and blood. We're asking a little bit too much of ourselves. We need to, that's brought us to self-loathing. We don't like ourselves as a species. We're acting in suicidal fashion. Again, not an alarmist viewpoint. It's very reasonable. So we've got to come in off the ledge of self-loathing. What was our crime? I can't see the crime scene. There is no crime scene. We deserve to survive, but we say we've been bad boys and girls. No, no, no. Something happened to us. We're injured collectively, trying to do self-interest when we're meant to be in communion with others. Yeah. So it's just we don't know what to do. We literally don't know what to do because it's not in our DNA to be self-interested.
Well, I always say the results of our life ultimately are the results of our belief system, which goes back to what you're saying. The belief system that has been built through generation, that is in our subconscious, that has taught us if X, then Y, without us pausing to think if Y is in our best interest and in the collective interest.
Exactly. Now, let's stay right on this point because we only have so much time. If I leave the listener with one thing, it's this. If we can agree that we are misinterpreting modern threats, then we can suddenly understand why we're in perpetual conflict. If we misinterpret a threat, then what comes back is going to itself be misinterpreted and highly misaligned. So that our horse staggers out of the gate and never recovers because we start with a misinterpretation, a threat. Misinterpreted threat is at the core of every single conflict, a misinterpretation. So right there, if we could just start there, we can understand how we got to this awful place. And then we unwind from it. We got to unwind this thing over decades, even a century, without disturbing one nickel of revenue streams. If we do that, we might as well wear sweatshirts with bullseyes on them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so I'm glad you're laughing at that because this is not a dark undertaking.
I don't know if I'm laughing, or if I'm like, yeah.
Right. It's not a dark undertaking. We are all about remedy and hope. We determine why we do what we do so we can undo it.
But you know what, Anthony, to your point, I mean, this is obviously a very deep conversation. This is for the benefit of everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Because abundance is part of us thriving. It's part of us being higher beings and all of that. So it doesn't mean, goes back to what I said in the beginning, that doesn't mean you're going to live in poverty and misery and all that. No, they're not mutually exclusive. You will thrive. You truly thrive instead of, be in a state of, well, I'm trying to soften the word suicide, but I don't know what a better word for
well,
that.
It's okay. Watch. In macro human affairs, we are acting in a suicidal manner, but not one person. 8 billion people are, we're heading out the cosmic door. If we were not to arrest human degradation, here's what's at the center of everything we're doing. We need to arrest human degradation. Human degradation must stop. Past that, now we can begin to go the other way over the immense periods of time where I would be long dead if this mission were to be successful. Over the course of a century, we would need an different type of thinking. We are not here to disturb anything anyone does. No religious capitulation, no economic capitulation, no cultural. We're not ready for that. But here's a fourth thing that coming out of the mist, Maria, the preservation of our species. We can unite under that now, right now. And humans all come from the same place. We're all flying on the same spaceship. If people ask me to consider politics, I say, wait a minute, there's only one spaceship. Why would all of its inhabitants be in a perpetual fistfight? And how will that turn out? Well, it'll turn out how it always has, 50 dead empires.
Yeah.
You know, so what's going to happen to us is not in question, but it doesn't have to anymore. It doesn't have to. That's the takeaway. I want everybody to understand. For the first time, what will happen doesn't need to.
That is powerful stuff, Anthony. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom. Very different perspective on, I would say, on the human race and the way we evolve and the way we behave and the way we act. Definitely so much good food for thought. And we can keep talking, but for the sake of time, let's hear, I think you gave us some great tips for advice and food for thought. I do have to ask you before we wrap up, what is your definition of rebellious? I am really curious to hear that.
That is something that I don't have to make up. I want to say something that's going to be hard on the ears. I do apologize in advance. Globally, we are a failed culture. Ouch, ouch. I get it. Let me finish. We're a failed culture. And when I say that, it's not scolding. No, we don't scold. No, humans will not be scolded. We will not be judged. We're a failed culture. So you're talking about rebellious. I don't rebel against it. I explain it. How did we get to this awful place as opposed to look at this mess? No. How did we get to this awful place? We cannot answer to a failed culture. We can only explain its failure and beckon it to survive. So that's rebelling against what's destroying us. And which always has, for knowable reasons. I want to make that the cherry on Sunday. We can know it all now. We're know-it-alls.
Well,
So thank you very much.
Totally take that, because I will take that, rebelling against what does not serve us. And I'll take that to a personal level, and I would say, yeah, rebellious to me is exactly that, taking out the cliches that dull my authenticity. Because you know what, when I'm authentic and true to myself, and I would say consciously aware, you act from a very different place, a place that is about collaboration, a place that is about supporting others, that there is empathy and kindness and gratitude and all those good things. So yeah, I'll take that. Okay, it's a different version, but it's good. It's good, Tony.
I'll end with this thought. When all of us feel a warm feeling inside when we are called to help, and when somebody's in trouble, we all go right to their assistance. There's no thinking. We go right to their assistance, and we all have this warm, wonderful feeling. Well, let me take it a little further. You're home. You're actually home. You're actually in the middle of our deepest calling, is to help what is helpless, to help what is helpless. Basically, we're meant to help what is helpless. We had to take care of our own, or we wouldn't make it to the next destination as we migrated. We need appreciation. We crave appreciation. Our needs are few.
And basic.
Yes, basic.
Yeah.
So the warm feeling, it's DNA. It's not casual. In our DNA, we're home. And there it is.
Yeah. Love it. Tony, where can people find you online? Where can they follow you, track you, see what you do?
This group was formed 5 years ago. The Human Injury is the book that I published in June. So people say, hey, this guy's trying to sell me a book. No, we're 5 years old. The book's only 3 months old. Give me that. This is a global mission. Noesisproject.com. We have 50 videos. Each of them make an argument. We don't do theory. Evolutionary baggage. What do I mean? There's the video. I mean, so we make and defend arguments because, again, theory is an orphan when we need straight answers. We are at the precipice that of whether or not we make it or we don't as a species. I have to put it that way. I risk it all by doing that, but I can't soft pedal it. Noesisproject.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Lots of food for thought, lots of great food for thought, I think. And you know what? I'm excited, Tony, because a lot of the stuff that I talk at the personal level, I think very much aligns with what you have shared with us today. So, and I do have to say, you have a great, I guess it's an intro video to Noēsis that I watched, and I thought was very insightful. So if you guys want to go check it out, we'll definitely make sure to share the social media links for Tony and the project. Tony, I appreciate you being here. If you guys have any questions, please ask them, share this, comment, let us know how we can support you. I appreciate you being here and tuning in, and make sure to stay rebellious. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.